Zoom website. Um,
Thank you.
and
Good
then
looks.
all right, brother, take it over.
Thank you, brother Vic. Honestly, man, I think you nailed it on the head because there's going to be a focus, especially in this training, for kind of like maximizing credits during inspection period. But realistically, the negotiations happen at every stage throughout the process. You're always going to have an opportunity to negotiate, to fight for your client. Now, some opportunities are greater than others. The focus is going to be the inspection period, but just know that at all stages during the transaction, the negotiation never stops. You're not limited until you're funded, until you're at the closing, even at the closing table, but until you're even funded, there's always a chance to negotiate, to fight for your clients, and do everything that you can for them. And then I want to remind you guys, because a couple weeks ago, we did the whole Sun Tzu training, kind of like fighting for your clients, making sure that, because we are quite literally on the front lines for our clients, right? We're here fighting for them, making sure that we get the best possible deal that we possibly can get. And so I really want to focus on that because at the end of the day, that is the value that we bring, right? We're here to fight for them, pull all the levers we can so that at the end of the day, our clients, our buyers have the highest chance of success. And Priscilla said something else earlier that makes a lot of sense. And she also nailed it in the head in that a negotiation is, it's possible that at any moment, but also it's a dance. Don't treat it like a science. Treat negotiation as an art. When you learn to have that dance with the seller side and learn how to flow with them, you're going to be surprised at the repairs. You're going to be surprised at the credits that you're able to get from the seller side. You'll be very surprised with the results. And at the end of the day, that's what we want to do. We want to maximize the amount of credits, the help that we could get our buyers. And we want to be able to sleep at night knowing that we did everything possible for them. Because that's how we get the referrals, that's how we get our next deal. And aside from that, folks, let's get started. Let's get started. I like usually to start with like a quote. Um, and before we go ahead and read that quote, I wanted to really let you know the framework for negotiation, right? At the end of the day, you're going to come to find that our buyers are very emotionally invested in the purchase or sale of their home. In this case, we're talking about the purchase, but they're going to be very emotionally involved, and it's easy for them to get fatigued. And now, the value that we bring as professionals in this industry as a representation for our clients is that we can be a little more impartial. We could be objective. Okay, okay? Oh, okay, my bad, my bad. Keep in mind, folks, this is a very emotional transaction for your client at the end of the day. With our objectivity, with us being able to be impartial, we're able to really draw the lines and really look out for them in a way that they really can't look out for themselves. When you're emotionally attached to a deal, you're going to show your cards right off the bat. And so, uh, can I get a volunteer, somebody to read this quote? So this is a very famous quote, actually. It's from a book that I read. It's a book called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. I really recommend this book. It's actually, he was an FBI terrorist negotiator. And so that's literally negotiations at high stakes. So it's a really good book. I highly recommend it. At the end of the day, guys, you can't feel too pressured. We gotta always be calm, cool, and collected. At the end of the day, we are not negotiating hostages with terrorists, right? We're negotiating deals for our clients. And although it is a big deal, it's not life or death. So don't be too hard on yourselves and always stay calm, cool, and collected when you're negotiating with the seller side. So who wants to read this quick quote? Anybody? Do I got to choose somebody?
The person across the table is never the problem. The unsolved issue is, so focus on the issue. This is this is one of the most basic tactics for avoiding emotional escalations. Our culture demonizes people in movies and politics, which creates the mentality that if we only got rid of the person, then everything would be okay. But this dynamic is toxic to any negotiation.
What does this mean? Just like a free for all. What does this mean to you? There's no wrong answers. Okay, let me explain what this means, right? It's very easy for us to get the listing agent and make them the reason, even if in our minds, make them the reason why this deal cannot work. And you need to disassociate yourself from that way of thinking. At the end of the day, we need to be objective on the subject on what we're negotiating about. So if our buyer needs credits to close, or if our buyer is looking for a certain credit or repair, in order to make the deal work, when you're negotiating with the seller side, you need to always keep that as your main focus. Because again, like I told you at the beginning, this is a very emotional transaction for your clients. And what we can do is be very objective. That is the value that we bring. So never shift the perspective to, hey, if it wasn't for this listing agent, I'd be able to get a credit or repair. No, think instead, listing agent, seller side. Look, this is what we need in order to make this work. So always keep the focus on the content. Don't put the focus on someone else or think that they're the reason why the deal is not gonna work. And another thing, guys, again, the value that we bring is that we can be objective. Studies show, because I've had a lot of times, I had a recent deal where a listing agent, I was working on negotiating credit. They were very unprofessional, very rude, cursing, clicking on me. And it's very easy for us to kind of like fight back, argue back, and make them the subject of our negotiations. And you need to always bring it back to the real subject, the credits, the repairs that are needed in order to make the deal work. Because if you let that listing agent get to you and get in your head, you're going to start getting angry. And you don't want to be angry when you're negotiating. You want to stay calm. You want to stay cool. You want to stay professional. Because studies show, there's studies to back this up. When you are in an angry state of mind, you lose quite literally. I think it was like 10 IQ points when you're angry. Just by being angry, you're literally less smarter in that moment. And again, what are we here to do? We're here to maximize our clients' chances of success, right? And if you let that listing agent get in your head, you get flustered, you're going to lose some IQ points. And I'm telling you, keep those IQ points so that you can negotiate to the best of your ability. Because if you let that listing agent get in your head, you're doing your client a disservice just by letting them get to you,
Yeah,
right?
100%. And I would like to add to that because man, I hear the agents negotiations all the time because a lot of you guys call me when you're negotiating, and sometimes some of you guys get too caught up on the listing agent being an asshole, and you start taking it so personal, and sometimes you forget that you're making it about the listing agent, and it shouldn't be. It's got to be about, like what the quote says, resolving the issue. And in my opinion, resolving the issue is getting what your client would be happy with, getting that credit or getting to the terms that your client is happy and content with. And sometimes you feel like that's another thing. Don't get caught up and don't try to just, sometimes you could lose a deal trying to be a hero, getting more, going above and beyond. I know it's a great feeling getting the clients more than what they even wanted. But when it comes from a place of just trying to get one over on the listing agent, it could backfire. So,
Yeah.
just keep those things in mind. There's been times where I just tell the agent, hey, but we're at a point where your client's happy. Okay, let's just do that and let's keep moving forward. We resolve the issue, you know. So yeah, I just wanted to add that too, man. That's very
Thank you for
important.
that. Yeah, guys, and any additions? I mean, this is like mastermind style sin pena. Like, we're here to talk. And you nailed it on the head, man. I mean, we can't let our egos get in the way. Even if we're fighting for what's best for our client, if they're happy with what they have at this moment, who are we to tell them that we are able to put the deal at jeopardy just to add a little bit more if they're happy as is? Right? So we can't let ego get in the way, as you mentioned, Victor. And just remember the very first part of this quote: the person across the table is never the problem. The unsolved issue is. So focus on the issue. This is one of the most basic tactics for avoiding emotional escalations. And that's what you want to avoid: an emotional escalation on your part. The seller side may get an emotional escalation. That's on them. They're doing a disservice to their seller because they're literally losing IQ points. And you're arguing with a dumber person if they're angry, if they're flustered. Don't get to their level. Again, the main benefit that we have is that we can be impartial for our clients and we can be objective, stay calm so that you can be literally at the smartest you can be when you handle those negotiations. So presentation is everything. This is kind of something that we talked about 3 weeks ago with the Sun Tzu training. Folks, as professionals, we cannot be short-sighted. We cannot think in the short term. The negotiation begins with the very first meeting with the listing agent and or seller. So the very moment you step into the home, sometimes you're going to see the listing agent. Sometimes even you're going to meet the sellers. And even before that, when you call to schedule that property or you send them a text, you guys need to keep a professional attitude from the get-go. Because if you're the type of agent that doesn't reply to the message or leaves them on red, for example, or you show up to the showing about 15, 20 minutes late, believe it or not, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Because what if that's the home that your client wants to place an offer on? And what if you get that offer accepted? And now you're going to have to negotiate with somebody that feels, hey, I'm negotiating with somebody who's not really professional. Uh, they're okay with wasting my time and getting to the showing late, not being communicative. So they're not going to bend over backwards for someone that doesn't respect their time, that doesn't conduct themselves professionally. So again, negotiation begins from the very first meeting, from the very first interaction. Always stay professional because you're thinking ahead. You're thinking when you get to those negotiations, they have nothing in their minds that they could complain about you. They know that they're dealing with a professional and not someone that's going to waste their time. And these are all little levers that help you maximize these negotiations and achieve the highest chance of success. If there's anything for you to remember with this slide is that your perception is reality. So give the perception that you are a professional, that you know your stuff, that you know the mortgage and real estate process at the end of the day. Because these are all little levers that are going to help you when you get to that stage of negotiation. So always from beginning to end, stay professional. Now, step number one is always recommend an inspection. So why do we get inspections, guys? Answer that. Well, we get inspections. We get inspections. First of all, you want to cover your ass, right? Always recommend it because at the end of the day, when you show a property to a buyer, you're only showing a very limited scope of that home, right? Just because you need to get the inspection because they see a certain scope of that home, and we need to give our buyers an overall idea of the condition of the home. We'd be doing them a disservice if we don't recommend that inspection. So also you want to get ahead of the game. You want to spot major issues up front. You don't want to figure things out down the line. So inspections are very important to find these major issues. You want to tackle that conversation head on while you're still in your inspection period. Get ahead of the game and always recommend an inspection, cover your ass, and see what kind of ammunition you have to work with when you go into the negotiations. So a very, very important rule. I wrote on here, silence is golden. So first of all, we should all have an inspector that we're comfortable with, that we get on the same page with, and that is trustworthy. You should always have someone in mind, so that you know how they work. You can always be on the same page, and you always want to have a recommendation on hand. But sometimes the buyer wants to work with their own inspector, and that's fine. In my opinion, I mean, a lot of inspectors, they like to go into the property and they like to be very vocal about everything. Oh, this ceiling fan is not working. Oh, what's up with this water pressure? A lot of them want to justify their work, and they feel that the way to do that is to be very vocal, to tell the seller side all the little things that work, that don't work. And in my opinion, that is not the right strategy. The best strategy is to ideally keep your mouth shut, because the listing agent or the seller side is always going to take what the inspector says and try to twist what they say. So you'll have an inspector that says, "Oh, the ceiling fan is not working. It's not a big deal, but yeah, it's not working." So then when you go speak to the seller side and you try to negotiate a credit or repair that ceiling fan, they're going to say, "Yeah, the inspector pointed it out, but didn't he also say it's not a big deal?" And that's going to make it more difficult for you to negotiate that repair or credit. And I know that because it's happened to me. So if you have an inspector that you trust, the ideal is for them to keep their mouth shut. There's nothing that they need to say, because at the end of the day, what's important is that whatever things come up in that inspection, it makes it into the actual report. That is what's important, not what comes out of their mouth. If your buyer, on the other hand, chooses to work with their own inspector, I think it does not hurt to get everyone on the same page and explain to the inspector the strategy, which is to keep your mouth shut. Anything that needs to go in that inspection, you add it to the inspection, but we don't need them being vocal about every little tidbit that is wrong with the home. Because you're going to anger the seller side, you're going to harden their hearts. That's not something you want to do just yet. And again, they're going to twist everything the inspector says for their cause. So make your life easier. Now, if your buyer chooses an inspector, I don't recommend pulling the inspector to the side and telling them, "Hey, keep your mouth shut. Don't mention things until the very end," because that could be misconstrued. You don't want to catch yourself in a situation where the inspector tells your buyers, "Hey, just a heads up, your agent pulled me to the side and told me not to say anything." No, that's not how you handle that conversation. At the end of the day, you are the quarterback, you are the point guard of the transaction. There's going to be a lot of hands in the cookie jar, but you're there to make sure that everything goes smoothly. So what you do is you step to the side right before the inspection, right? You get buyer in front of you, you get the inspector in front of you, and you lay down the ground rules. You say, "Hey, look, this is how it's going to be handled. Don't be too vocal. Anything that you do see, you put it on the inspection report, because that is what matters. And what I'm gonna do, Mr. Inspector or Mrs. Inspector, is I'm gonna ask you do you see any major issues? And if you see major issues, definitely tell us about it. And we don't mind if the seller side listens in on that. But for the most part, don't speak. Just do what you got to do. All that's important is that it makes it into the inspection report. That is what we need, and that is the evidence that we can use at the end of the day. Because if they mention something and don't include it in the inspection report, you can't really use that as ammunition. Make sense? So next thing is we need to collect our ammunition. Very important. Once you get that inspection report, you're going to collect your ammo. You're going to look at the things that came up. Now, I recommend that you research the costs of the repairs. I highly recommend you tap into actual like professional contractors. Like, be sure you create these relationships. You're going to start calling different contractors for certain deals. You're going to build relationships and you're going to have connections that you can later refer your clients for. When you get like a quote for a certain repair or things like that, you're basically just collecting your ammo for the negotiations, which is super important. And then well, we'll get to it later as far as like what kind of costs to add or to negotiate. But definitely tap into professional contractors. Collect all your ammo. You want to know what arrows you have in your quiver for the negotiation. And really important, guys, before you go ahead, after receiving the inspection report, before you go ahead and start the negotiation process, quick tip, but very important tip. Send the 4-point and win mitigation report to an insurance agent to see any potential insurance issues. Do that before you even begin the negotiations because they'll be able to spot, for example, if you're under contract for a financed offer and there's something in that win mitigation or, well, more like the 4-point, if there's something in those reports that's going to stop you from getting financed, that's something you want to know up front. You don't want to find yourself in a position where you negotiate credit, you get $10,000 credit, all is good, and then you hear down the line that the home is not financeable. You don't want to find yourself in that situation. You want to collect all your ammo up front so you know what to negotiate, be efficient, and negotiate all those things at the same time. Because you could get that $10,000 credit, seller's unhappy to give that credit, but they agreed to it moving forward, and now you find out that you need the seller to do an extra repair because the home is now unfinanceable. They're going to think that you're giving them the runaround. So my advice, once you get your inspection, once you get your reports, send it to insurance and make sure that you have all your ammo in line so that when you proceed with the negotiation, you know everything that you need and you have just like a bigger picture on when you're fighting for your client. Okay, so what is the best way to start the negotiation process? Some people like to do a phone call or they'll send a text. My ideal situation, and I'm going to provide a template. At the end of the day, folks, there's more than one way to skin a cat, but I want to really share with you guys the template that I use. It's given me a lot of success when it comes to negotiation and repairs. The ideal situation is you send an email address, an actual email message to the listing agent because email looks professional. It carries more weight. You don't want to start the negotiation through a phone call or through a text message. And the beauty of an email is that a lot of times the listing agent will forward that email message to their sellers directly. And if they do that, you want to make sure that your email message asking for the credits is professional, it's organized, it's clean, easy on the eyes, and it shows that you have everything organized on what is needed in order for this deal to move forward. And if they said, if a lot of times listing agents will forward that email to the seller, so keep that in mind. Email carries weight. And something that has really given me high chances of success is starting that negotiation with an email. So very important part, the slide that should have been here. Yeah, it's not here now, but the very important part, once you send that email, you have that email out to the seller side. Very important tip is you need to play the waiting game. You need to wait because it's a pretty charged email that you're going to send to the seller side, right? You're going to send an email basically asking for credits. And what you want to do is really, really, really just let it settle in. You just send a huge email. So wait, do not reach out to the seller side. Usually I like to let that silence fill in. I don't even like to text them and say, hey, just want to confirm you got my email. Ideally, give it 24 hours. If they have not responded, called you, or texted you in 24 hours, that's when I would reach out and just confirm that they got the email. But what's very important is that you wait, let it settle in. You want the silence to fill, and then you let them reach out to you in the ideal situation.
David, I have a question before you move forward. How so when you get that inspection report, what is the conversation like with the buyer? Like what like a lot of times buyers don't know, okay, well what happens now? Like do I do we ask them to fix it? Do we ask for a credit? Do we ask for anything? Sometimes
Yes.
buyers they don't even know that they can ask for credits. Like they don't even know. So like what do you usually recommend in that situation? Like or when you speak to them about it? Like
So
I'm sure if you're gonna ask for credits, you're gonna have a conversation with the buyer about it, right? So
yeah, good point.
what does that typically sound like?
Always manage their expectations, right? You let them know, hey, look, we just got the inspection report. I sent the report to my agent to see if there's anything that's stopping the home from being financed, right? So you really got to treat that conversation with the buyer and treat it in the form of priority items. So the very first priority items in the inspection report is always going to be anything that stops the home from being financeable. Because that absolutely has to get done. And it's something you want to take care of during the inspection period while your buyers can still walk away. So I'll usually formulate that to them as far as priority items. Priority items is always going to be what's stopping the home from being financed. And then secondary is going to be, look, Mr. Buyer, I'm going to do everything possible to maximize the credits that I can get for you. I also want to try to push repairs. You know, there's nothing set in stone just yet, but we're going to pull all the levers possible in order to make this happen. And while you're speaking to the buyer, I also like to get a number. Really good question, Vic, because I like to ask them, look, is there a specific range, a credit amount that we need or are looking for in order to proceed? Because that's also an amount that you want to have in the back of your mind where you know what cards you're holding. So I also like to ask them, look, is there a certain amount that we're looking for? I'm gonna push for it and try to make it happen. Make sense? Cool, cool. This is the email template that I use. I split it into part one and part two. We're gonna begin with part one. So this is my email. Again, perception is reality, right, guys? Everything needs to be organized. It needs to look professional. It needs to look like you really organized your thoughts with the conversation on the credits that you're going to be requesting from the seller side. So the email goes like this. Hey, listing agent, attached you will find the inspection report. Please let me know if you have any questions. Here are the items that came up that need to be replaced and or repaired. We are willing to wait for your seller to fix these items, however, also willing to take credit for them. I have associated the estimated costs of these repairs with professional contractors that I have called and quoted. And then you're going to list, you're going to itemize all the things that came up in that inspection report. Now, it's important to reach out to your contractors, do some research on how much these repairs are. You always want to overestimate, right? I like to place maybe like between a 30 to a 50% uh inflated values for each of these items because at the end of the day, the seller is going to want to come down. So for all these repairs, you want to just give yourself a little bit of cushion, right? So repair of the roof, AC maintenance. Give yourself a little cushion because at the end of the day, the seller's going to try to come back lower, right? Now at the very bottom, we have total repairs and replacement costs. About 12,138. This is the inflated number. This is about 50% inflated prices that I'm sending the seller side. Something that I really need us to keep in mind because you don't want to learn this the hard way. And this is kind of where mortgage, having an idea on basic mortgage products and guidelines come in, guys. Because as you're negotiating credits, I had a situation once where the roof for the home that we were purchasing was completely faulty. And just a heads up, if there's no life remaining on the roof, there's still a way that you could close on it. As per the insurance, you can still close on it as long as it gets replaced in 30 days. So there is a way around that. But we did have a situation where the roof was faulty. So I was able to negotiate $30,000. It was between $25,000 and $30,000 credit at closing for our buyers. So that sounds great, right? You want to get that addendum signed. You want to lock in the $30,000 because it's an amazing credit that you just got your buyer. But again, this is where having a basic idea on your mortgage guidelines comes in. Because if that's a finance offer and your clients are buying conventional, you're going to be capped at how much credit at closing you could get your buyers. Makes sense? So, for example, in this scenario, I had a home, I think it was about $400,000. Angelo actually helped me get this one. It was $400,000. Angelo was doing the loan, and the roof was faulty. We negotiated a credit for the roof between let's say $30,000, but it was a conventional loan. And on conventional loan, you can only get a max of 3% seller contributions. So at 400,000, that's a max of $12,000. And that's something that you're going to want to know. It's something that you need to know. Because a lot of times, a lot of these listing agents will say, hey, look, I'll give you $30,000. And they'll know very well what the seller max contributions are on either a conventional loan or an FHA loan. And you don't want to fall for that trap. So the way you handle it is, first, you want to know that guideline. You want to know what the max seller contributions are. FYI, it's 3% on conventional and 6% on FHA. So the way we handled that situation was, I said, hey, look, seller, thank you for the 30,000. As you're aware, there are max seller concessions that we need to work with. So give me $12,000, which is the max seller concessions that you could get on a $400,000 purchase price, going conventional. Give me $12,000 at closing and give me the rest being shaved off the purchase price. That's the way you're going to want to handle that. Don't fall for the trap, because you might be on the other side of an agent that knows what they're doing. They'll offer the $30,000 knowing you could really only use $12,000 of credit for the $30,000 credit that they're giving you. So very important tidbit there. This is part 2 of the email template. Now, this is the most important part, guys. This is pure psychology, right? Because in the very first part, we inflated these prices, right? Just to give ourselves and our buyers a little bit of cushion. And we said, look, we're looking for $12,000 in credit. Now, in part 2, this is where the psychology kicks in. This is why we gave ourselves a cushion of 50%. Based on this amount and being realistic, we don't expect the seller to provide all of this. However, we think that a fair credit would be $10,234. So now this is about a decrease from the 50% cushion. We're now giving a cushion of 30%. So in the seller's mind, it's like we already came down on our request for credit, right? So this is pure psychology, guys. This is now a 30% cushion, and we want to make the seller feel like we're giving them a break. So based on this amount, being realistic, we think that a fair credit would be 10,000. We really like the house. So these things are much more than we anticipated, while keeping in mind all the remodel changes that are needed for the home. And now here's where the strongly worded part of the email comes in. Please let me know if this works. If not, please send me a signed release and cancellation to convey your seller's position so I can further discuss and see how we would like to proceed. So by telling them, this is what we need. If not, send me a signed release and cancellation. You're really negotiating from a position of strength. And that's always what we want to do. We always want to negotiate from a position of leverage, from a position of strength. And a lot of times, I mean, these listing agents will get spooked and it'll open up the conversation. Because again, you send this email and you're gonna stay quiet. You're gonna let it settle in. You're gonna let them speak to their seller. You're not gonna reach out if you can help it. So by sending a strongly worded email like this, send me a signed release and cancellation, or it's not gonna work for us. You're negotiating from a position of strength, and you're gonna find that it opens up the conversation. Sometimes they'll call you straight away. Sometimes they'll wait a little bit themselves, but it'll always start the conversation. And it'll give you an answer, right? Because let's say in the scenario they do send a release and cancellation, you're going to know that that seller's pretty serious about remaining firm either on purchase price or on not giving any credit. And something that's really important, guys, is the way that last sentence is written. It's been given a lot of thought, right? Because you cannot say to the seller side, send me a signed release and cancellation, or we're getting out of the deal. You cannot say that up front, because if that goes in front of an attorney, and we kind of we learned this the hard way. If you get that in front of an attorney, they're gonna say, "Hey, look, you're not allowed to do this. So my seller has every right to get out of this deal." So just keep that in mind. If you use this template in any way, use this wording, because this wording makes it so that you're not really saying sign me a release and cancellation or we're out of the deal. Because if you find a seller or the seller's working with an attorney that knows their stuff and they want to get out of that deal, they can now get out of the deal. It don't matter if it's during inspection. Now the seller can get out of the deal. Don't find yourself in that position. So the way I worded it, very mindful of the law and the way it works, the way guidelines work. If not, send me a signed release and cancellation to convey your seller's position so I can further discuss and see how we, the buyers, would like to proceed. So that's a very important tidbit right there. So again, just want to reiterate, right? Once you send that email, it needs to sink in. Do not reach out if possible. I like to give it like 24 hours. Let the silence fill the room, and you're going to see that the seller side is going to reach out to you and it's going to open up the conversation. After that conversation opens up, play the game. Play the game, right? They're going to reach out to you. They're probably going to deny the credit request, or sometimes they accept it. When I send that email for the credit request, I like to shoot for the stars. You don't get what you don't ask for. And the seller cannot get out of the deal just because you're trying to negotiate. So start high, shoot for the stars. That's the way I like to handle it. And again, remember to stay cool, stay calm, stay collected. You want to hold on to your IQ points. Stay smart. Don't let the listing agent or the seller side get you angry. Because once they get into your head, you're going to lose some of the chances you have of succeeding. And a very important thing, guys, is yeah, the seller side might come back saying, hey, look, we're not going to do it. We're not going to give you any credit. We're not going to do any repairs. Your job is not to be a messenger. This is where you step up and you say, look, Mr. Seller, I understand that my request for $10,000 or $12,000 credit does not work for you. But what's another figure that does work for you? Let's try to make this happen. We're not in this business to just be messengers. So I don't want you to get the rejection from the seller side, go to your buyer with your tails between your legs and say, hey guys, they denied it. What do you want to do? At the end of the day, the value that we bring as agents is that we're here to buffer. And we want to go to our clients with either a solution, or we want to go to our clients having exhausted every possible option we could in order to get them what they're looking for, right?
Yeah, so
So when
look, so another thing, David, why that is too, what you just said, that if they come back saying no to the 12,000, exactly how you said that about you said, oh, what's a number that would work for you? A lot of times too, sometimes they the no to the 12,000 is sometimes a knee-jerk reaction that they're just like, no, I don't like I'm not doing that. They don't, it doesn't even, they might be upset to the point where they don't even think to counter. Like they're just like, no, no, no. So you going back asking what's a number that would work, it gives them time to calm down, reassess, really think about it, and like you said, be smarter and realize, okay, maybe I don't give these guys 12, but maybe I'll give them 5 or 6.
right, right. And I appreciate you asking that
But it
question
gives
at the
them time
beginning.
to like, it gives them time because some realtors don't like. I like to sometimes when I'm with clients and sometimes I like to let my clients sleep on things. Like I let them, you know what, sleep on it. Let's have a conversation about it tomorrow.
It's true.
Because sometimes they get upset right away and they have a reaction. And then after they sleep on it, they think about it, they have breakfast, then they think about like, all right, you know what, Vic, maybe let's just give a credit, but I this is the number I can give. I can't give them more than this. That
Yes,
happens a lot, all the
absolutely.
time.
Absolutely. And that's why at the very beginning when you asked, what's the conversation you have with the buyer? This is why we want to give ourselves a cushion. So you want to have in the back of your mind what that figure is that your buyer needs in order to move forward, right? So the idea is we're giving ourselves a cushion. We started with the 10,000, but we don't want to keep hitting them with the 10,000. We want to really open up the conversation. Mr. Seller, I understand the 10,000 does not work, but what's another figure that does work? We want to make this happen. Always bring the focus back to the subject, which is we need to walk away with something before we continue with this deal. Always stay calm, cool, and collected. And that's how you play the game. Because at the end of the day, guys, I want to reiterate, we're not here to be messengers. We're not here to get the no from the seller, go to our clients and say, they said no. What do I do now? What do I tell them? Then we go to seller, and then seller tells us to talk to them. That is not the position you want to find yourself in. We're here to buffer. Our clients are already emotionally invested and fatigued as it is. So buffer the situation. Try to maximize what the seller would be willing to give you. Right. Once you get the no, you tell them, hey, look, I understand that no doesn't work. What's another better figure for you? And you go from there. You try to maximize, you try to get something so that when you do involve your buyer and you do speak to them, the buffering has happened and you can either give them something of substance or you could give them the bad news that, hey, look, I've given everything I could. I've been pushing them, pushing them, pushing them, but I don't see it happening. And in fact, they've also sent a release and cancellation to convey their position. So they feel really strongly either we move forward as is, or this is our chance to get out of the deal, right? And at the end of the day, guys, the negotiation is a dance. It's not a science, it's a dance. You always want to buffer. You want to try to maximize what the seller's willing to give you before you go to your client and tell them this is where we're at. You want to have an answer for them, ideally. And the negotiation, we put an emphasis really on the inspection period. Inspection period, you tend to have a lot of leverage because sellers already signed with you. They don't really want to see you leave, and you have every opportunity to get out of the deal. But the negotiation never stops. Just because you're outside of inspection, just because you're in your inspection, it doesn't mean that there's no opportunity to negotiate. There's always that opportunity. Some opportunities are greater than others. But when that opportunity comes up, you want to seize it. You want to shoot your shot, right? I actually had on my last deal, we had a final walkthrough, right? Where the sellers really weren't budging. They gave about $2,000 credit. They weren't budging on anything else, but they were willing to repair the other items that I was requesting. So they repaired a ceiling fan, they repaired the water pressure in the home, and they also promised to repair the ice dispensing machine for the refrigerator. So we do our walkthrough, right? Everything looks good. The ceiling fan is good. The water pressure looks good too, but then we get to the ice machine, and the ice machine has not been worked on. And that was a problem, right? Because contractually, we agreed, and again, all parties want to close, right? But contractually, we all agreed that, you know, this would be an issue. And my buyers really wanted this fixed before even closing on the property. So I walk up to the listing agents, you pull them to the side, I tell them, hey, look, the ice machine was not fixed. We had an agreement. Do you want to step outside and handle this, or do you want to have this conversation with all parties? Because I mean, you have the seller there, you have the buyers there. So just out of courtesy, how do you, we can step outside, and just so you know, this will be an issue for closing, or we could hash this out here. Listing agent was cool with hashing it out there, and guys, we were, you don't get what you don't ask for, right? When you see an opportunity like that, you shoot your shot. So I said, hey guys, look, just want to be very transparent. We had an agreement. Ice machine is supposed to be working. It has not been fixed. It's closing day, and you didn't communicate this to us. We don't appreciate this curveball, right? Let's do a $1,000 credit at closing. If my buyers are cool with it, we'll do an extra $1,000 at closing, and we could all make it to the closing table today. And then you just let the silence fill in, right? Don't say any other words. You want to use silence. Just like when you send that email for inspection, be comfortable in silence and use the silence to your advantage. It might get awkward. Get comfortable in that awkwardness because there's a power to it, right? So you say, hey, look, at $1,000, we could all make it a closing today. What do you want to do? And then you stay shut, right? Let the silence fill in. The seller obviously looks uncomfortable, but I could tell they're contemplating it. Eventually, the silence does its job, and they say, look, I want to get to closing. It doesn't cost $1,000 to fix that ice machine, but I'll give it to you. Let's lock it in with an addendum, and let's get to closing. Let's get this done. So guys, the negotiations don't stop or start during your inspection. There's going to be different opportunities to negotiate and look out for your client. You know, at the end of the day, it's what we're here for. We're here to maximize those opportunities for them, to show them that we're fighting for them, that we care about them, right? And whenever those opportunities come up, you never really know when they will, because every deal is so different. But you'll know when they come up, and you'll have an opportunity to stand up for your buyer, and you're gonna want to do it, right? Because that's what sets us apart from the average agents, uh, to the real professionals, the people that really make it in this business, right? So aside from that, I mean, I just want to open the floor in case y'all have any questions, um, or any other strategies, right? This is my strategy for negotiation. It's worked really, really well in the past. But again, there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? I always want to we always want to adapt and learn different strategies in this business because this business is always changing.
The only thing I would add is, like, in case you didn't mention it, but before you submit an offer, always ask about major items. Always ask how old is the roof, how old is the AC. Ask about the plumbing. If you know it's in an area that is known for copper pipes or other types of plumbings that could have insurance issues. Uh, Annual here says if appliances are leased. That was so random. We actually had a deal that closed recently where the appliances were leased, and like I'd never heard of that. I was like, is that real? Like, is the client lying? Maybe
Yikes.
she's lying. And apparently, yeah, no, it's a thing. You can lease and pay monthly for a refrigerator, stove, washer, dryer,
But it was a gas stove and a
gas stove,
dryer.
and a gas
Dryer.
dryer. Yeah, they were leased, which is pretty
Wow.
crazy. Again, that you're always running into new things in this business, so that was very random. But
Oh,
always
that's
ask
interesting.
about those things because because you want to know upfront, like so you're already preparing if these things could be major issues. And another thing is if you run into if you run into a situation where like that situation with a $12,000 credit, and you run into a situation where the seller really isn't budging and is not going to give a credit, you have to use your market knowledge to guide your client to make a decision whether they should continue moving forward or pass. And
True.
you need to know, okay, like, is this the best deal right now? Like, is this, or if we go back out on the open market, do we have a good chance we'll find a better property? Or is this like, or is this, or in this area, is there very low inventory? And this is probably the best you're gonna find. It's gonna maybe take a long time before we find something else. And maybe, you can help them make that decision to like say, hey, yeah, there's $12,000 here. You don't have to fix it all right away, but there's a good chance if we don't continue, you might be renting for a lot longer. Okay, so you got to use your market knowledge to guide them in that decision. So I would just add those two things.
No, that's true. That's true. That's a good point, Victor. And always bring up facts, right? You show what the inventory is like, what are other properties going for. It's a really good tidbit. Always use facts. Don't just try to sell and use your opinion. You show them the actual data. You equip your buyers so that they know how they want to move forward. Is it worth continuing with this property, considering what needs to be done? Does the market value, is there space uh, for growth as far as the home price? You equip them, you present those facts, and you go from there. So that's a great point, Vic. Any
Anybody else?
questions?
Anybody else have any questions? Any contributions, feedbacks, thoughts? What do you guys think?
David, what would you say about the appraisal? Do you think that's another negotiation strategy that you can do as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought it up, right? Because if the appraisal comes in low, it's very easy for us to, uh, think negatively, think the worst, right? Oh man, this deal's not going to go through. We really need to start looking at these obstacles. They are in fact obstacles, but we need to look at them as opportunities, right? Because the appraisal is what it is, right? And you can use that as a negotiation tool. You could say, hey, look, appraisal came in low. You got to meet us at this price. And hey, just a friendly heads up, this will be the issue that you have with any financed offers that you sign up with. So let's hash this out now, right? We got to stop being stunted. We need to look at these obstacles as opportunities because it is in these obstacles that we can show our value and show what we can make happen, right? So I'm really glad you brought that up. That is another useful negotiation tool. If the appraisal comes in low, don't beat yourself up too much, use it as an opportunity to be a champion for your clients. Definitely.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool. Of course. Of course. All right. All right, family. I think there's no more questions. Thank y'all for joining. Of course. Thank you, Helen. Thank you. I appreciate y'all's time, the investment of y'all's time for this Zoom. We're going to have another one on
Thank you.
Thursday, right? Hello. Oh, okay. Never mind. Never mind.
Yeah, we're gonna have another one on Thursday for sure, man. Great, no, great information, man. Great information. Great, great. I loved it.
Awesome. Awesome. Next one on Thursday. Reach out to us, anything y'all need, and we'll see you soon. Happy Halloween, all right?
Happy
Thank you.
Halloween, Pete.
Same.
Be safe out there.
Seriously.
Thanks. Bye.
Check your candy.
As long as it's not brownie, I think we're good.
Okay.
What do you mean? That's the best part.
Oh, teaching.
Dang. Hold on, we're still recording. Careful.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.